Coming up on today's show, Formula E says it must have an exciting start to the season. Polestar opens its first showroom in Norway. And what has Europe done to upset plug-in hybrids so much? Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to EV News Daily. It's Monday, the 15th of October, 2018. It's Martyn Lee here, and I've been through every EV story I can find, so you don't have to. Well, thank you to those patrons who pushed us over 100 supporters over the weekend. I just checked Patreon again, and thank you to yesterday's supporter, who was supporter number 100. And I don't know what page I was looking at, but it was just showing up as Paul. But I checked again, and it now says Paul Stevenson. So there you go. For completeness, thank you very much, Paul. You were our 100th patron of the podcast, Paul Stevenson, to give you your full name. And finally, a full credit. A new supporter earlier today, Mark William Gainey. Thank you very much, Mark. Mark with a C, in case you're wondering, anyone, is a new producer of the podcast. Nothing gets made without the producers of this show, so thank you to everybody. Thank you to myev.com as well for helping make the show. Myev.com. If you haven't heard of it yet, and lots of people have now, in North America, if you're buying or selling a used EV, don't muck about on all the other sites that are still confused with fossil cars and have got little check boxes and drop downs for engine capacity and all that nonsense. It's purely for EVs. Check it out. Well, the last few days have seen a handful of the Formula E Gen 2 car launches from various teams, and now we hear from the Formula E CEO, Alejandro Agag, courtesy of Autosport. He says it's very important that from the moment the lights go out for the very first race, the new electric cars give exciting racing. This is the first time for Formula E without a mid-race car swap, and the cars have twice the power of the first-generation cars. He says Autosport say that in an attempt to guarantee on-track action with no need for pit strategies, the next season, which starts at the end of this year, is going to feature Formula E's attack mode concept, which allows drivers to use an extra 25 kilowatts of power at certain predetermined times throughout the race. Well, the first eprix will be on the 15th of December. I've talked about this before. My concern that some of the previous street circuits were fine for the lower, slower powered cars, but we need to be thinking bigger, on a larger scale. If this is going to be the series that really moves Formula One fans over to electric racing, because Formula One recently, holy moly, I'm a big Formula One fan, but it's been some wasted races that I've been getting up early or staying up late to watch. Alejandro Agag says the circuits for Formula E are being expanded. They're very large, and they've got more opportunities for overtaking. I would also love to see Formula E taking in, now they've got the new cars with the big battery and more power, taking in some of those legendary circuits, like here in the UK, Silverstone. And we'll see what happens with that. I'm sure it's enormously expensive for the promoters to do those deals, but I'd love to see it. Check out Autosport for that full article, by the way. I'll put a link to Autosport in the show notes. And if you're a bit of a Formula One fan, a bit of a motor racing fan, and a Formula E fan, chances are I'm guessing Autosport might be one of those websites that you subscribe to, because the kind of member area of that just gives you so much more. Well, moving on to Polestar, and with assembly of the first pre-production prototypes underway in Sweden, Polestar is now focusing on opening its network of showrooms, according to Car Scoops, of course Polestar being the spin-off of Volvo. The very first Polestar Space, that's what it's called, Polestar Space, is going to be in Norway, and more specifically in Oslo, downtown Oslo. That's not far away from the parent company Volvo's home base in Gothenburg in Sweden. But they've chosen Norway for another reason. That's because the country is one of the world's most important EV markets. Norway has some of the highest gas pump prices in the world, about $7.66 for gasoline at the moment. That's nearly 2.5 times the price in Norway as it is in the US. I'll put a link to the Car Scoops article in the show notes if you want to read more. I do have a quote from the Polestar boss. His name is Thomas Ingelath, and he said this, and I quote, "Polestar spaces are an important part of our customer experience and where we will physically meet our customers. As Norway is one of the world's most important EV markets, it's logical to begin the Polestar space story in Oslo. Polestar spaces will be staffed by non-commissioned product experts rather than hard-selling sales executives." End quote. That sounds rather like somebody else that sells electric cars. Now, whilst the Polestar 1 is a $150,000 plug-in performance car with a fossil engine, from the Polestar 2 onwards, the brand will be pure EV and more affordable. Well, it's that time of the month when all the EV sales figures are being updated, and once again, the increases, they just keep on a-coming. In the Netherlands last month, they loved their Teslas. Out of a total of 2,986 plug-in cars sold, the Model S was way out in the lead with a third of all the market, 1,052 sales. The Model X, 593, the Leaf, just 292. It's a small market in the Netherlands, but it's the best it's ever been since 2016. In the Netherlands, there's much higher taxation of expensive battery electric vehicles coming early next year. So well done to Tesla for knowing that, recognising that, seeing the demand and moving supply to Holland so that people can get hold of their cars before the taxes kick in. Whilst the Zoe doesn't do well in Holland, it does really well in its home market of France, where they can't get enough of those. In France, the Zoe was easily number one, 1,482 sales last month in September. The next closest was the Leaf, just 390. Generally, France is up 10% on EV, month on month. So why are pure electrics doing well all of a sudden in Europe in the last month, and why are plug-in hybrids disappearing down those top 10 sheets really quickly, especially here in the UK? The story in the UK this year has been one of plug-in hybrids doing very well, and articles have been in the mainstream press saying, oh, pure electric vehicles aren't doing so well. Well, that trend was reversed last month. I'll tell you why. A reminder that Europe now has the new test cycle for measuring emissions and efficiency. It's called WLTP, and it came into force on September the 1st. Until now, drivers, and particularly company car drivers, have been blessed with incredibly low taxes on plug-in hybrids. Some of those people didn't care about the range. Some of them didn't care about installing a charge point. Some of them never even charged the things. It was all about lower benefit-in-kind taxes, BIK. It's all thanks to the lower CO2 that you could get on the old way of measuring, and that has now been changed. Using the old way that's been done for decades, called NEDC, car makers who had worked out how to A, game the system, and B, it was very beneficial to plug-in hybrids because of the way it was done. The new system is much more real-world. WLTP results are now closer to real-world usage than the figures created by the previous new European driving cycle. As a result, 9 of the top 10 best-selling plug-in hybrids for the first half of the year have either A, been pulled from sale, or B, are no longer rated as offering less than 50 grams per kilometre driven of CO2. Well, the figure is below which the car is rated as being ultra-low emissions and therefore not eligible for tax breaks, reports Automotive News Europe. The danger for plug-in hybrids is where the governments reduce or remove the incentives for people to buy the models as the UK's just done. The market halved in the Netherlands in 2016 as soon as the government slashed the generous company car tax incentives on plug-in hybrids because the government decided people just weren't plugging them in. Therefore, they had a fossil engine and they were carrying around the extra weight for the battery. So that leaves in the UK valuable incentives, free money from the government, but not for long. As I told you over the weekend, and if you haven't downloaded the weekend podcasts, why don't you bung those on download? It was announced that from November the 9th, the remaining grants are only going to be available for pure electric vehicles or hybrids that can go a very long way on their battery power alone. In fact, so far that there's none on sale that actually fit the criteria. Automakers could have done a few things, added battery size, for instance, to increase the all-EV range, lowering the reported CO2 emissions, because it's an average, of course. However, what we've seen is rather than put through these plug-in hybrids through the new WLTP cycle to get them approved and certified, they've just removed them from sale. Cars which were really popular, and it was on my list for a long time, the Passat GTE, very practical car and very fast, and of course had that really clever hybrid electric system. And equally, the Golf GTE, also very nice. They've sold well up to now because of subsidies, But without those cars coming in under 50 grams per kilometre of CO2, they just won't get those subsidies. With battery prices dropping, those cars should have got bigger batteries for longer range and lower CO2, if the manufacturers, of course, can source the batteries, but that hasn't been done until the products are refreshed. Well, speaking to journalists on the sidelines of the Paris Auto Show last month, Citroën, or as I think maybe I should be calling them, Citroën, because when they have the TV adverts here in the UK, and the female voiceover at the end says, "The new Citroën." So maybe I should call it Citroën. The CEO, Linda Jackson, was somebody who would indicate the possible direction of the new Citroën city car, the C1. Now, according to Car Scoops, whilst PSA is investing in an electric approach for the new Citroën C1 in its Peugeot sibling, the 108, Toyota is undecided about going zero emission with something like the iGo. Nonetheless, PSA and Toyota have 1 year to decide whether to keep collaborating on those three models for the third generation, or whether Toyota will pull out and not do zero emissions. Well, Citroën's new C4 electric car is one of the cars that could rival VW's new ID range. But petrol and diesel power will be on offer with the Citroën, unlike the ID cars. Of course, the VW ID range is pure EV. According to Auto Express, the next generation Citroën C4 is going to have a pure electric option, but not until 2020. Auto Express can reveal that PSA Group Engineering Vice President Gilles Lebon revealed that instead of EMP2 platform, the next C4 is going to use the longest variant of their platforms. PSA initially announced that the eCMP platform would support battery packs up to 50 kilowatt hours in their Super Mini EVs. However, he hinted that this would open up the possibility of a bit more battery capacity for the C4. Using a bigger platform means they could well do 60 kilowatt hours. In essence, become Citroën's VW rival. Well, our final question today that I'll pose to you, and maybe you've got some answers for this that you want to give me on email or in the comments. Are electric cars more expensive to insure? It's a question often asked after people have spent many hours choosing the car itself. Then they ask, oh, how much is it to insure? Well, What Car's been asking the same question. Jim Holder points out that early adopters of EVs, like the Tesla Roadster, the early Nissan Leafs and the Renault Zoes, reported difficulty in even getting cost-effective insurance for their cars. It was because insurers had no historic data to work on regarding the cost of repairs. As a result, many insurers were really cautious in their predictions, raising premiums or even declining to insure electric cars altogether. That led to higher prices and less choice for owners. Well, as electric cars become more commonplace, there's more data for the cost of repairs, so more insurers have entered the market and costs are coming down, according to What Car. Highlighting the insurance premiums that can vary, owners that were contacted by What Car also reported they'd experienced a drop in the insurance premium over petrol and diesel cars that they were trading in. Paul Farrant, for instance, well, Paul is a driving instructor and he now has a Renault Zoe, and he told What Car, I quote, "My premiums for the Renault Zoe are 30% cheaper than they were for the Renault Clio 1.2 petrol," end quote. Well, something that I have personal experience of quite recently is the Renault Zoe battery lease. I was calling around to get some insurance quotes, and I was surprised just how many of them had no idea what was going on with that information. So they were saying, what do you mean, battery lease? No, you haven't got to insure it. And I was saying, you sure? Because if the car's stolen, Renault are going to want their battery back, and it needs to be insured. You know, in the end, it's why I called Plug Insure. Now, I called Plug Insure here in the UK, and I spoke to Sam, and he knew exactly what I was talking about with the battery. And so did I, but it's not like I played dumb. That sounds a little bit more sneaky than I was really being. I just asked him, what do I do about battery lease? And he gave me the answer that I wanted to hear, which was, the battery cost this much by Renault when it was new. They devalue it by 10% per year. Your car is 2 years old, therefore I would insure the car for what it's worth plus the battery for what it's worth, and we came out at a number. Well, if you buy or lease an EV that requires the battery lease, like the Renault Zoe, it's important to establish whether you do have to take out separate insurance to cover the battery on the policy that you go with for accident or theft. And of course, Plug Insure said, we recommend you do. It doesn't make a big difference to your premiums, and then you're totally covered. As a Polar Plus member, I also had the benefit, if I wanted it, of free legal cover. Now, I opted not to tell them that I was a Polar Plus member because I figured it was a tiny amount extra on my premium, only a few pounds, and for them, for Plug Insure, I figured it was mostly profit anyway. And I wanted to support them. I didn't want to just nail them down to every last penny that I could get. How weird is that, right? Normally when you're getting car insurance, you call around everywhere, you do online comparison quotes. It's almost adversarial with the insurance companies, and you save every single penny you possibly can. But I'd had such a pleasant experience on the phone to Sam. It wasn't online, I just called him up, and I was like, can we just do it all over the phone? And we had a really good chat. It was quite quick. I thought, you know what? I'm not just going to screw them down for every freebie I can get. So I didn't mention the little benefit you can get with Polar Plus membership. And I just paid a little bit extra for the legal cover. It wasn't a lot extra, and I figured, you know what? I'm just supporting them in a tiny way. I mean, and the premium was, so on the last car was £205, and on the Renault Zoe, it was £250. So it went up a little bit for a car that was 6 years newer and £6,000 more expensive. So, I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? Thank you very much to everybody who's answered the question of the week yesterday. We always set you a new question on Sunday after I've read out all of your emails on a Sunday in the show. So yesterday, I got through all of last week's question of the week answers, and then we set the new question. Well, keep your answers coming in on the email, which is hello@evnewsdaily.com. That is hello@evnewsdaily.com. Or there's the YouTube comments and Facebook comments, and my blog has a feedback form. Here's the question. Here's the new question. What's more important to you? Getting an EV with a big battery or an efficient EV? Well, Tesla recently topped the efficiency charts, and owners of the Hyundai Ioniq will always tell you that their car is incredibly efficient. However, lots of car manufacturers are racing to go for the biggest size battery. So what would you rather? Would you rather get the EV with the biggest battery, or would you rather get the EV with the most efficient battery? It means that the battery may be smaller and you have to stop more often, but you get that satisfaction of really getting loads of kilometres per watt hour used. So, tell me your answer online. And if you haven't got an EV yet, you're just EV curious, and you're thinking of buying one at some point in the future, tell me what you would prefer. Would you go for the bigger battery, or would you go for the most efficient EV you could get? And tell me why. Thank you very much to 102 patrons of the podcast, whose generosity means we get to make the show for you. To look at patreon.com/evnewsdaily if you were interested, but no pressure, because it's nothing that, the show's always going to be free for everybody. There's 265 previous episodes, all for free, on the usual places you get podcasts from. The blog is evnewsdaily.com. If in return for me doing this for you every day for free, you can leave a review. Is that okay? A review on the platform you choose? It just makes a really big difference. Come and say hi on Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter. Search EV News Daily. You'll find me. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow.